book of Habakkuk. Who has read this book before? I think it's one of the more interesting minor prophets that you can read and learn about. In fact, all are good. But this book of Habakkuk, though under the category of minor prophet, is actually not exactly a book of prophecy. Not really. It is a book of questions and answers. Questions and answers. It's a book of complaint. Habakkuk, not happy. Why God? Why God? Why God? Why like that? Why you not doing anything? So a book of complaint. But it also teaches us one thing, that we can bring our questions to the Lord, and He will answer. So don't fear the Lord as in the form of running away from Him. Run to Him. We fear Him in worshipping Him, in obeying Him, in revering Him. But we don't fear Him as keeping a distance and we run the opposite direction. We run to Him when we have got questions. So I really enjoy studying and learning from this book, and I hope to share some of those with you. So, in this introduction, let us just look at some things. Habakkuk is known as the doubting Thomas of the Old Testament. You know who is the doubting Thomas in the New Testament? You know, right? Lord, unless I feel you, I touch you, I see you, I will not believe. So come, touch. See, got hold on. So this, I will not say he is a doubt, to the extent a doubting Thomas. Those scholars put him doubting Thomas, but I don't think so. I think he has got questions, and we also do have questions as believers, right? Why God? Like the day the two planes crashed into the towers in New York. Why God? It's okay. Ask Him. Not exactly a book of prophecy, which I mentioned. If you look at, like just now, the book of Nahum, prophecy is foretelling of events that will happen in the future. So, telling forth before it happens to Nineveh. And eventually Nineveh was destroyed, was totally eliminated, the people as well and so on. That is a prophecy. But in this book of Habakkuk, you don't see any of this foretelling. There's no prediction of events that will happen in the future, but answers given to questions asked. He was a bit disturbed. There was a bit of conflict within him because it was a contradiction between his faith and the facts, between what he had in faith in a God of justice, a God of righteousness, a God of mercy and grace. But what he saw in reality, the facts, is a bit of contradiction because God, if you are a God of justice, of righteousness, how come evil continues? How come the good people are suffering, the bad people are prospering? So it seems like, God, you are indifferent. You are not doing anything to rebalance this injustice. So he initiated dialogue with God. Now, if you look at the other prophets, on many occasions it is God who called them, right? Hey, I'm only a farmer, kena call, Yeah. I'm only a priest, got called. But this was the occasion where the prophet initiated a conversation with God. So you can approach him. No need to always sit and wait for him to approach you. and nothing about his personal life. So they have no idea where he was from and which pedigree. Now when we go on to the next book, Zephaniah, we will see, oh, he's wow, down the up the family tree you got Hezekiah. His great grandfather is Hezekiah, King Hezekiah. That means he got royal blood. So in Zephaniah here, you must help me. Zephaniah, which is the next book, which we will do maybe next week or the week after. The word of the Lord which came to Zephaniah, the son of Cushi, the son of Jedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Hezekiah, in the days of Josiah, the son of Amon, king of Judah. So he gave a lot of details of his ancestors, so you know where he came from. And other prophets will give you the location and during the time of what king and king. So you have a better idea. But Habakkuk, you have no idea. Nothing about his personal life. But suffice to say, he was used by God. He was a prophet of God, servant of God. So, what is the meaning of Habakkuk? Maybe at the end of the series on major and minor prophets, I should do a quiz. What's the name of each? What's the name of Leong? But the names all have got applications. So Habakkuk means what? Wrestler. Wrestler. Some say embracer, but I think wrestler is more apt because he was wrestling with God. So you will find it is about human complaints and divine responses. God hears and God answers. And sometimes silence is an answer. Because you may not want to hear the truth. You may not want to hear, but sometimes it's silence. But in this occasion, in the book of Habakkuk, it is not silence. God answered. So you have human complaints and divine responses. Books of whys. Why? Why God? Why God? And this book is, well, quite neglected. Also, Zephaniah. How often do you hear someone come on Sunday, pulpit, and then today I'm going to preach on Habakkuk? How many? Hardly, right? Or Zephaniah. So, even as he was questioning God, this guy was an optimist. He wasn't a pessimist. He wasn't about doom and depression. But because he wants an answer, and with that, he can look forward to beyond. So he pressed in, the prophet of persistent faith. Some people just give in. Okay lah? Whatever will be, will be. And then they just suffer in silence or live in ignorance. Doesn't matter. But it matters. Especially if you are a leader. If you are a man of God, servant of God, you need to know and ask God if you have to. Now, you say, no, but I'm a nobody. You are a leader in your family. You are a leader in your home. You are a leader in your cell group or whatever. In some ways, you are influencing others. So it's okay if you've got questions to ask. Because your kids might ask you, your grandkids might ask you. So go and ask God. And the theme is about faith, trusting God with the mystery of providence. You will find in this book one verse that features prominently. The just shall live by faith. The just shall live by faith. When we come to that, I'll explain to you a bit more. But Habakkuk, God is saying, Habakkuk, while you look at the world around you today, people are suffering, there is injustice, unrighteousness, and so on. But you, the just, which are the few, not the many, you shall live in faith. You shall live by faith. Continue to trust God because God will make things right. You follow me? Don't give up on Him. He hasn't given up on you and I yet. There are a few key verses. Chapter 2, verse 4. Behold the proud. His soul is not upright in him. He's not right with God spiritually. But the just, that means those who are just in God, those who are walking righteously, the just, justified. That means the same. You see, we are justified. It means just as if we have never sinned. The just, we shall live by faith, by His faith. The other one, which is a favorite of mine since I was a young believer, and that's how I got to know this book. I have never really crossed into the Old Testament, just started the gospel and so on. Then this preacher by the name of Ravi Zacharias, to me is a human torpedo, his brain works so fast. But a great preacher, he's an apologist. You know his apologist? Ones who always apologize. Now, apologist is someone who defends the faith. One who defends the faith. So, he has this gift where he has gone to university and people of other faith, whether it's Islam or Buddhism, who will challenge the reality, the truth, the Christ and so on. And he has that ability to defend. Because sometimes all these scholars, they pose very difficult questions, which ordinary people cannot answer. But he can, he's an apologist. So when I heard him preach back in the 80s, I said, oh, I didn't know the Bible was such nice poetry. I love it. Though the fig tree may not blossom, nor fruit be on the vine, though the labor of the olive may fall, and the fields yield no fruit, though the flock may be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will explain when we get there. But even though everything around you is bleak, doom, and down, I will still rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. There are also other verses, but these are the two very key verses. So, Habakkuk was a minor prophet, but with a major message. In fact, there are quite a few of them, minor prophets, but with major message. He was the last of the minor prophets to preach in Judah before the Babylonian invasion. Now, some say he was the last, but I can only say he wasn't alone. That means when the Babylonians came down and invaded Judah, the southern kingdom, they came down in 3 batches, right? 605, 597, 586, and they took away everything from the temple. Now, there were two other prophets who were around because they were also warning the people. One of them is a major prophet. You know who's a major prophet? Jeremiah. Jeremiah, if you remember, we studied that in 2017. I really like him because he was, for 40 years, he was preaching and preaching and preaching and preaching. And only one convert, and that was his scribe. No one else, And then they throw him in the dungeon and so on. Okay, but that was Jeremiah. And he was so, he even told the people, please surrender to Nebuchadnezzar. That's God's will. And Nebuchadnezzar heard about it, spare his life, right? Didn't take him into exile. Remember? Jeremiah. So Jeremiah was there in the final invasion of Judah. Then when we come to the next book, Zephaniah was also there when the Babylonians came to invade. And now we also have Habakkuk. So these 3 were contemporaries. The two minor ones, Habakkuk and Zephaniah, were around, plus the major prophet Jeremiah. They were around when the Babylonians came in. You see, really, hey, big no. Singapore is very small, one dot only. But you go Israel, it's big. So one man, God knows, one man cannot complete the job. You understand? So you got Jeremiah, got Zephaniah, got Habakkuk, and all warning the people. And that is God's mercy, God's grace. And He longed for the people to repent and come back to Him. So, he was one of the minor prophets. So the other one being Zephaniah, and major is Jeremiah, to preach before Babylonians invaded Judah. So, a prediction of the doom of the Chaldeans. Okay, there was one point that it was very clear: the Chaldeans will come in, the Chaldeans will invade. And you know what the Chaldeans? Chaldeans, Babylonians. And it was so specific. So, actually, was, in chapter 1 verse 6, we'll read it shortly. Unique among the prophets because he spoke to God. He's so unique. All the other prophets, as God spoke to them. But this guy, Habakkuk, he spoke to God. He initiated the conversation. Habakkuk complained twice to God. So, if you are not as champion as Habakkuk, don't complain more than twice, okay? I don't know what will happen the third time. No. Just bring your problems to the Lord. So he complained twice to God. Habakkuk asked God why good people must suffer. And Habakkuk asked why cruel people seem to succeed. In Singlish, it's called not fair. Right? We are so used to this. Not fair. I queue up so many hours. The Huawei phone. $54. Why no more stock? Not fair. Amazing. I don't think Singaporeans are poor. Generally, I don't think they're poor. I mean, $64 or so they can go and buy a phone, right? 100, I think original price $100 odd, right?
198.
I'm sure they can buy, but I'm sure they also already have a phone.
Yeah.
This is like a spare phone. $54 if you don't have, walk away. Come out, make headlines. Next to the Hong Kong protesters. Your problem is small compared to the Hong Kong people, right? Yours is only a phone. Yes, it's their freedom. But Singaporeans are cute. I know this is recorded. Okay, laugh. Okay. Firstly, he made two complaints, right? So firstly, Habakkuk complained that the rulers of his country were wicked. That is not news. In the northern kingdom, how many good kings?
None.
Jitan, zero. Northern kingdom, nobody. All taken to exile. Southern kingdom, how many good kings? 5. So, to say that the rulers of his country were wicked, well, most of the time all wicked. God replied that soldiers from Babylon will attack these wicked rulers. Oh, okay. Then he got the second question. Hey, but not fair. The Babylonians are more wicked than us. Why you take a wicked one? I mean, you take a righteous one to come and punish us, we accept. I mean, if your school discipline master is a gangster, just roam the street at night, in fact, he's more terrible than you. You only copy answer during exam, and now cannot report to principal office. And then you get a gangster outside to come and rotan me. Cannot, he's worse than me. So you want someone righteous to come. But God is using, in His own divine wisdom, using an instrument through the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, to come and punish the people in Judah. But Habakkuk complained to God again. Habakkuk said that God allowed cruel people to attack good people. Good, man. In your eyes, it's called self-righteousness. In your own eyes, you are good. But in God's eye, there's no minor sin, major sin, medium sin. Don't have, right? Sin is sin, right? God replied that He will punish cruel people. He will punish the Babylonians later, but first He punished you first. Because you know why? Judgment begins in the house of the Lord. But this does not always happen immediately. But God told Habakkuk to write this down, because God will definitely punish evil people. So he wrote down in chapter 1 verse 6, he wrote Chaldeans. So, good people must trust God. The time will come when God will rule the whole world. So, it is in God's perspective, God's timetable, not ours. The story of believers' conflict of faith and the ultimate triumph of faith. So you got conflict with faith, but ultimately faith will triumph. A personal experience which ends not with a wail, but a song. So initially he started with complaint. He ended with a chorus. Started with complaint, wailing, whining, but ended up singing, praising God, because now he understands God's perspective. He sees it from God's angle. Not with an inquiry which he started with questions, but with an affirmation. So, go and approach God. You will come out better, and hopefully you will sing and be affirmed. Now, looking at this time chart, you will find in these 3 chapters divided in chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. So chapter 1, you find questions and answers. 2 questions and you got answers. Then decree what the Lord spoke to him. And then he praised God and testified. And he sang. You follow me? So, chapter 1, he complains. Chapter 2, he went to the tower. He went up higher. He went to the tower, and there the Lord spoke to him, gave him the decree. And then, what do we have? Then he rejoiced. So you see, in ascending, he listened, and then he prayed. So he complained, he listened, then he prayed. Later I have another table for you. If you don't like this, that table might be easier to do. So, first question he asked, he got answer. Second question he asked, the answer is here. Then third, no more question already, enough. Passed already. So now he prays and he rejoiced. In chapter 1 he asked, how long shall I cry? And then when he ends with, I will rejoice. So from wailing, he ended up singing. Inquiry, ended up praising. So key verses we went through. Keywords, why? And woe. Okay. Just now that table I didn't do one. This table I do one. It's in Singlish, I hope you understand. So you find, again, chapters 1, 2, and 3. You will notice, I give you this overview so it helps you to have a better understanding, easier to read. Habakkuk was in the valley, we will see. He was down in the valley when he asked God the question. Spiritually, he's down in the valley. Then he went up to the tower to hear God's answer, the second question. Then in chapter 3, he went to the mountain, higher, getting higher and higher. In chapter 1, he was wandering and wrestling with God. Why this, why that? Struggling. When he was up in the tower, he was watching and waiting for God. And then when he got the answer, he was worshipping and witnessing testimony for God, testify for God. In chapter 1, he was sighing. You know why people sigh? Because they got too much air inside. Okay, sighing. In chapter 2, he was seeking God, sought the Lord. And then in chapter 3, he sang. So at the end, I hope by 12:30 you all be singing. Then, of the prophet, chapter 1, he was perplexed. That means what? Confused. Why God? Why like that? In chapter 2, he began to see God's perception. From God's eyes, from God's view, perception. And then he enjoyed the pleasure of God. Now he sees the big picture, he understands God, it is going to end up well. So he find it pleasurable. Oh, now I know. So all I can tell you is this book must start not so great, but it ends well. And we must keep that in mind when we approach the Lord. Because the last thing I want to go, example, Wednesday night prayer meeting, I go in happy, I come out hamjing back. Then I go prayer meeting for what? You don't want to, every morning you start your day praying, having your quiet time with the Lord, and then half an hour later you come out even angry, sad, depressed. You seek the Lord first thing in the morning because you want an uplift. So you leave the door. Go to work. Lord, this is your day, the day you have made, and I will be glad in it. And you go. Right? And so this is the book that teaches us that. So don't be afraid. Don't run away from Him. Run to Him. And you will be lifted up and you will end up with pleasure. Of course, you must ask the right thing. You open up your wardrobe, Lord, which one should I wear? That's your problem. People don't have that problem in Thailand. You know what? Open the cover, only one color. Now I'm talking about the religious. Otherwise, my friend in Bangkok will scold me. Right. That is the introduction to the book of Habakkuk.